Hi everyone, my name is Jodii Maguire. I'm a performance psychologist and I will be your host for this session on coaching the whole rower, presented by Rowing WA for its coaches. Let's begin with an acknowledgement of country. Think Performance respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of the lands on which we connect, yarn and grow. We pay our respects to the Whadjuk Noongar people, and we wish to acknowledge all First Nations people and their elders, past, present and emerging. It's important that we recognise the unique cultural heritage, beliefs and connection to these lands and waters and the communities held by First Nations people across Australia.
Okay, so let's run through what we're going to go through and the purpose of this session tonight. So I'm going to do a bit of introduction to myself just so that you understand my background and my experience. We'll go through the purpose of the session. We'll have three key topics for discussion, and that is what are mental skills and sports psychology fundamentals? How can we use mental skills training as coaches? And I really want to have a conversation about coach wellbeing to close off. So there's a couple of activities. I will pause the video or ask you to pause the video along the way. We won't do a Q&A tonight because this is obviously a recording and not the live session. However, I do encourage you to have a look at my email address at the back and send through any questions or give me a call if you want anything clarified. More than happy to do that. And have a quick chat with you about any questions that may come out of this session. And then we'll have 5 key takeaways that you can take home and implement straight away into your coaching. So let's kick off by a little introduction about myself and about my company, Think Performance. So my name, as I said, is Jodii Maguire. I'm a performance psychologist. I'm the founder and managing director of Think Performance Psychology and a licensed psychologist here in Australia under the APRA registration. I'm also a mentor, a volunteer, a software developer, a radio guest, and an author in progress, but it does seem to be taking a lot longer than I ever thought it would. I work in grassroots sport right through to elite athletes and have worked on a number of Olympic campaigns over the years. My work is in sport, business and performing arts education. I really enjoy working with individuals and team and helping them find ways to enhance their performance, tune into their mindset and develop to the highest possible level that they can develop. Why Think Performance? Why that name? Well, I genuinely believe that we do everything that we move through and do in life is in some way connected, driven by or impacted by our thinking and by our thoughts. So for me, mindset is the most important, exciting and interesting thing and skill we can develop in life. All right, here's some of the organizations that I currently work with or have historically worked with. There's a few more, but they're not on this slide. I haven't listed any of the organizations, schools, or performing arts areas that I work in because probably sports is more relevant to you guys as coaches. All right, let's kick off and let's do a reflection activity. And this is where I'm going to get you to pause the video and maybe write some notes. So what I would like you to do first of all is to define your coaching philosophy and your coaching approach. How do you show up as a coach every day, every session? And does this align with the high demands of a sport like rowing? So if you'd like to pause the video right now and just make some notes around your coaching philosophy and how you show up as a coach every day. It's a really important thing to think about so that you can develop some intentionality around that. All right, the next question that I want you to think about is, do you think sports psychology, what do you think sports psychology, mental skills training and mindset coaching is? So pause again, pause the video and write some notes on what you think those areas are. And welcome back. The final question for you to reflect on is, do you think mental skills training is important? If so, why? heard this saying before, the most difficult 6 inches to train or traverse is the 6 inches between your ears. And so hopefully today, by the end of this session together, you'll have more of an understanding of what sports psychology, mental skills training and mindset coaching is and why it's important. Let's have a look at what sports psychology and mental skills training is. I'm going to give you a formal definition of sports psychology here. So it's the study of human behavior and how psychological factors can affect sport, exercise, and physical activity. It can also include the application of psychological principles to address issues in mental health. So, sports psychology is using those psychological principles to enhance performance and also to help deal with mental health issues that may come up in sport. Mental skills training, on the other hand, is the interventions and skills that we use and the tools that we use to teach sports psychology and to teach techniques that will help improve performance. It helps us to rewire some learned behaviors that have been unhelpful and rewire them in a way that is more helpful. And that helps athletes manage emotions, manage thoughts, improve focus, and improve concentration. So that's kind of the difference between the two. One is the study of human behavior and what is the skills and the tools that we use. Some of the key concepts that might apply in rowing relating to sports psychology would include breath work, managing negative thoughts, focus and concentration, visualization and imagery, self-talk, body image, fear, monotony, managing the monotony and tedious repetition that can occur in sport and in a sport like rowing, where there is a lot of rehearsal and a lot of training and a lot of repetition. Talk about thought reframing. And let's go through some of these fundamentals. So the fundamentals of effective rowing coaching from a mental skills perspective is that idea of moving from technical instructor to complete coaching. I want to acknowledge, first of all, that coaching is a really hard pursuit. It's challenging because you are coach, you are mentor, you are motivational speaker, you are a lot of things to your athletes. So there's a lot of pressure that is inherent in coaching, and there are a lot of time and energy demands. Coaching the whole athlete requires a focus on the body, the technique, and the craft in the sport, and indeed the mind. I know I've just said that coaching is hard, and I know I said it takes up a lot of time, but I'm now introducing that idea of coaching the mind as well. But to be the complete coach and to be a more effective coach and to get better outcomes for both yourself as a coach and your coaching, but also for your athletes, we do need to focus on what I call the complete athlete model, and that is the strength, speed, fitness, physical training, the technical, tactical, craft elements of a sport, and then the sports related mental skills that come with every different sport. Communicating with clarity and consistency, I think, is a really important element in complete coaching. And there are some ways that you can look at communicating more effectively to be able to enhance the mental skills training and, in fact, perhaps some of the technical skills to help you become a more complete coach. The challenge of coaching, we need to have that conversation about what does success mean to you and what does success mean to your athletes. And I think that's a really important conversation for you to have with your athletes. Does success simply mean winning? Does success simply mean podium placements? For me, and the work that I do in sports psychology, success more relates to our effort, our attitude, our energy, being coachable, being our personal best, beating our personal best, being better than we were yesterday, not comparing ourselves to others, but being better every day and showing up a better version of ourselves. We also want to think about balancing challenging your athlete versus supporting your athlete. This comes up a lot in coaching and can help you go from technical instructor again to that complete coach. How do we continue to challenge, inspire, and motivate our athletes whilst supporting them emotionally as well? It can be a real balancing act. There is no one right way to do it. And in fact, every athlete will require different elements. Some of them will like a lot more challenging coaching. Some will like a lot more nurturing and supportive coaching. We want to be able to create a culture of accountability and feedback and setting two-way expectations. So I strongly encourage you to let the athletes know, the athletes that you're working with know what it is that you expect from them, and also ask what they expect from you, because they will expect coaching, they will expect communication, they will expect time from you. So if you can set that expectation and be really clear with them, I think that sets a really nice platform for growth and development between you and your athletes. Time is always a challenge for us, but I want you to remember that both time and energy management are important in coaching, because we give a lot of time and a lot of energy to our athletes, and burnout is real. So making sure that we're effectively managing both can help you have a longer, stronger coaching career. Different athletes will require different things from you. As I said, some will require more technical coaching, some will require more mental coaching, and some will require more physical or more motivational coaching. Sometimes you will feel like the pseudo-psych for your athletes. It's important that you don't take that on to feel like that you need to fix everything for your athletes. It's important that we have good conversation with our athletes, but we certainly don't have to be their therapist or their doctor or their physio. Your job is to coach their technical skills, their mindset skills, and their strength. And there's lots of people in the coaching environment that can support those things as well. So reach out if you need help and support with any of your athletes, or redirect them to somebody in their support network. If it's a mental health concern or you're worried about your athletes, refer them to their family, to a GP, or to somebody that may be able to help them with that area of their development. And think about what your role as coach means to your athlete. Sometimes we can blur the line as coaches simply because we care so much about our athletes, and we can come across as perhaps a parent or a friend. So be really clear about what coaching means to you and how you can maintain your boundaries as a coach. It will help you with some of that time and energy management as well. So let's look at some of the fundamentals of sport and performance psychology for rowing, and how to build mental skills into your coaching repertoire, okay, and sports psychology into your coaching. So helping your athlete develop the skills to manage their emotions and perform under pressure is effectively what we're trying to do here. So we talk first and foremost about goal setting, and we hear a lot about goal setting in sport. We talk about it a lot. And we're probably sick to death of talking about goal setting. But I do want to encourage you to set it up as one of the fundamental skills for your athletes to start working on. And remember, those goals don't have to be season-long goals. Those goals don't have to be goals that are so far in the future that they feel unmotivated and uninspired by them. We can actually play around with goals a little bit, and they can be 5-minute goals, they can be 1-minute goals, they can be hourly goals, they can be session goals, they can be monthly goals. Make goal setting fun. When we make goal setting fun and we reward and celebrate goal achievement with our athletes, it inspires them to want to do it and repeat those behaviors. I'm going to pop this one up there. I don't know why these are out of order, but we'll go with the individual differences and talk about the idea of being able to coach your athletes from a visual perspective, an auditory perspective, and a kinesthetic perspective. I'm sure many of you have heard of that model, and it's about demonstrating and showing them and maybe drawing things up for them. When we talk about auditory coaching, it's using our verbal communication to help them to understand concepts and to teach them. And kinesthetic is obviously the touch and the feel of the boat and the water and all of those kind of things to help them connect to their learning. So effective coaching uses all three styles, but also try and tune into what your individual athletes use as their primary modality of learning. All right, another thing that we can build into our mental skills coaching is this idea of managing emotions. We often think that emotions are the enemy. I firmly believe that they're not. I think emotions can provide us with lots of information about what we and what our athletes need, or what they might be struggling with and blocking their performances. So keep the conversations open and bring emotions into them, and talk about when you see big emotions, or when you see flat emotions from your athletes. Open up a dialogue with them on it, because it's going to help you to teach them about what they might need, or where they're having a particular performance block. So don't push the emotional conversations to the side. It is very much a part of being a complete coach. Using breath work, encourage your athletes to take a deep breath, where particularly if they're feeling stressed or frustrated, or they're fearful or worried about something. Breath work can help settle nerves and make your athletes feel calm. So there's lots of ways we can do, and lots of places we can do breath work. Beginning of races, beginning of new challenges, when things are frustrating, bringing the breath work in to settle the nerves and clear the mind and open the mind is a really effective technique. And that's as simple as saying, all right, everyone, let's take a breath. Let's settle some of the nerves. Let's clear our minds. Take a breath together. It's as simple as that kind of language. Visualization is a great skill that you can use. It's a great skill because it builds muscle memory. It's a great skill because it can help our mind's eye to see the skill that we're trying to develop ever before, or even before we practice it. It can help us visualize the skill if we're struggling with a particular skill. It can help us develop muscle memory on those days that we don't want to build load, but we want to build process through visualization. Self-talk, we really want to help our athletes and encourage them to tune into their self-talk and to reframe their thoughts and identify any negative thinking they may have in relation to a particular aspect of their rowing, of their emotions, of a skill development. So encourage your athletes to communicate with you about what's going on in their thoughts, what's going on in their mind that might be helping them and motivating them, and reuse that, but also how can we manage and improve and get rid of the negative self-talk. Focus and concentration is a skill that we can absolutely build. We often think that it's something that people have or people are better at than others, but it is a skill that we can build by practicing, by sitting in our focus and by directing our attention to what's important next and what's important now. And you can use that language as coaches when you notice focus or attention has shifted away from the execution of a skill or a practice, and we say, okay, stop, let's bring our focus back to what's important now. So we can encourage that and build that language into our coaching. It encourages our athletes to think non-judgmentally about when they lose their focus and concentration, and not to start panicking, but to calmly bring it back to what we need to be doing. So how can we use these mental skills in our coaching? Encourage your athletes to connect with their thoughts and feelings, to develop the skills to build solid performance mindset. I'm not going to get you to do this tonight. We did a little bit of practice on the night that we were live with this, but it is something that you can pause the video now, or even after this video, you can practice some deep breathing yourself. You can practice what it might be like to give your athletes an instruction to breathe and take a breath. You can practice the instruction of thinking about their self-talk. You can think about your own self-talk and what that's like. And you can encourage yourself to visualize what your next coaching session might look like. And you might be able to use that as a skill to encourage your athletes to visualize something they might be stuck with, or visualize their goals. All right. So now I want to move on to a really important part of sport and performance psychology. So this is one of the theories of psychology, and it's called self-determination theory, or SDT. Many of you may have heard of this. It may be new to some of you, but what self-determination relates to is motivation, and in particular, it helps coaches to foster intrinsic motivation in their athletes by satisfying three basic psychological needs. And I'm going to go through those with you, and I'm going to give you some coaching tips on them. But motivation is a very important element for athletes and for coaches, where their training may have a high level of repetition and monotony. By creating an environment that supports the development of motivation, coaches can improve long-term commitment, can improve performance, and in fact can improve the well-being of their athletes. So what are those three basic psychological needs that all humans have, but in particular athletes who are goal-driven and goal-directed individuals? So intrinsic motivation is really important for athletes. So number one basic psychological need is this idea of autonomy, and that idea that we have a need for control of ownership of what's happening for us and what we're doing. So autonomy is that feeling that your actions are a result of your own choices and will, rather than external pressure. So this is where a coach can move from high control to providing structure and support. So instead of controlling the environment, you can provide the framework and the structure, but give the athletes a little bit of autonomy around their choices and have a conversation with them. And I'll go through more of this when we do the coaching tips, but you might be able to give athletes some choices around the way they train and the way they conduct themselves within the rowing environment or your environment with them. The second basic psychological need is this idea of competence. And we all like to feel competent and capable in what we do and feel that we're being effective. Athletes are no different. So they seek to feel competent. And in fact, when they do feel competent, their confidence can actually skyrocket. So competence is that feeling of being effective and mastering difficult and sometimes even fundamental tasks. So feeling that we can do what we set out to do. And you can hear, as I say that, you can hear how that relates to that internal motivation. Coaches can support this need in their athletes by creating an environment where athletes can experience growth and success. So really talk about the successes they're having and how well they're doing and how they're growing and mastering certain tasks and challenges. And that can actually make them feel really competent. The third psychological need is this idea of relatedness, and this is connectedness and a strong sense of belonging. Relatedness is feeling cared for and respected and connected to others in your social or your sporting environment. It's a sense of belonging within the team or the rowing community, and it can be a really powerful internal motivator and driver for athletes. So those three, we're now going to break them down and look at some very practical coaching strategies and coaching tips of how to bring these three things, which improve internal motivation for athletes. So number one, how do we develop that autonomy and that individual need for control and ownership in athletes? And it might be to offer meaningful choices and to allow the athletes to have some options in the ways that they may train and the drills that they may do. So where you can be flexible in that, allow them to make choices and decide for themselves what training might look for a particular segment or part of practice. And this can provide a sense of ownership of their development and their journey. Explain why you're asking them to do things, or why you've got certain rules, or why you put limits, or why you put certain tasks into training. When people understand why, it suddenly becomes a little bit more palatable for them, but although also they can internalize the value, and that makes them more willing to engage in certain tasks and behaviors. We can involve athletes in the decision making. We can seek feedback on how training routines and strategies and timing are going. This shows athletes that things from their perspective are valued and involves them as collaborators and part owners of their progress. So those three strategies are really helpful in building autonomy, which gives athletes ownership, which helps with internal motivation. Let's look at the next basic psychological need, and that's competence. And so the practical coaching strategies here goes back to that thing I talked about with goals. Set achievable and realistic goals. Aim for small goals that build towards larger success. Sometimes we make the mistake of setting really big goals without breaking them down. So they often feel demotivating and they often feel unachievable. When we set smaller goals, they become more achievable, they become more realistic, and we can create opportunities for mastery. And it's important to celebrate those little goals and celebrate the progress. The next thing we can do as coaches is to emphasize and encourage a growth mindset. We can help athletes frame their learning and their mistakes and any fails that they have as an opportunity to develop rather than reinforcing it as a deficiency or that something is wrong. Celebrate the effort that your athletes are putting in. Even if it's only small improvements that you're seeing, it's still trending in the right direction. And sometimes with an accumulation of those small successes, we can see big growth over time. So you'll see when athletes use language like, I can't do this, or I'm really struggling with this, or I'll never be able to do this, we can get them to reframe that with a growth mindset. The idea is to get them to say, I can't do this yet, but I want to keep trying. Okay, so this promotes persistence in your athletes. Providing constructive feedback is really important to help with this idea of competence, and focus your feedback on effort and the learning process and not just results. This boosts the athlete's sense of efficacy and reinforces their growth trajectory. So constructive and positive feedback can help build confidence, can help build competence. One method of doing this is the sandwich method, and I'm sure you've all heard about this. It's where we might place some positive feedback, offer some challenging or constructive feedback, and then offer some more positive feedback. So it's like a sandwich, and that's why it's called the sandwich method. And it can help with that positive feeling of accomplishing something. So that's one method of doing that. Let's now look at the third basic psychological need that humans and athletes really feel internally inspired and motivated with, and that's relatedness. We all like to feel connected and have a sense of belonging. It's a fundamental, basic human need. And so when we have a really strong sense of that, our performance and our sense of effort and connectedness and competence and confidence again can really grow. So some practical tips here for you as coaches is really focus in on building a team ethos and have your athletes involved in building that team culture, the team standard and the team values. This promotes a commitment to teamwork and ensures that each of the individual takes a sense of ownership around that, but they also feel included and supported. Invest in individual relationships. And I know that I said previously we can be time poor as coaches, but this is a really important piece, is where we can try to connect not only with the whole group, but we try and connect individually with each of the athletes and showing genuine concern and interest in them personally and in their athletic development. We can also create opportunities for connection. We can bring team building activities, freestyle training and freestyle play and self-regulated games into training. It doesn't have to be the same every day. We can have all of these different methods of coaching that can break the monotony of certain sports and certain drills that we do. We can create opportunities for social interaction outside the formal drills and outside the formal training sessions, and this can help athletes build meaningful relationships. This is often difficult for coaches because as coaches, we feel like leaders and we feel like we have to be the mentally tough and mentally strong ones all the time. But this idea of sharing vulnerability is really important, where athletes can show their commitment to challenges themselves. They can show that it's sometimes difficult to coach and that there's lots of challenges along the way, but you're keen and you're excited and you're motivated to overcome those challenges, both in the coaching environment, but also with your athletes and alongside your athletes. And this way we build a stronger sense of community and relatedness with our athletes. So here is it in a sort of graphic, again, a visual kind of representation of how do we build that internal motivation, and it highlights the autonomy, the competence, and the relatedness. What I'd like you to do is perhaps pause the video now and think about how you're going, or maybe even write some notes. How are you going in each of these areas, and what ideas from those tips could you bring to enhance your coaching? So if you want to pause the video now, you can come back to it later. But if you're sitting here now, you may as well pause the video and think about how are you bringing these 3 things to motivating your athletes. All right, welcome back. What I would like to go through now is just a little bit of a conversation and some prompts around coaching mindset. So coaches play a vital role and a very influential role in the lives of athletes. And that's at all stages of their life, whether they're young athletes coming through or they're more experienced or more senior athletes who might be doing it for competition or might be doing it for fitness and for socialization. So it doesn't matter when we have our athletes, at what stage in life, we can still play a very, very important and influential role. And we should see that as a privilege. As coaches, we should see that as a privilege to play that role in people's lives. Understanding your own mindset and developing your self-awareness can enhance your coaching skills and can build your intentionality and communication with your athletes. So really starting to build an awareness of how you go about your coaching, developing your skills intentionally, developing your connections intentionally, and really understanding your own mindset when you turn up can be very helpful in building success as a coach and success in your athletes. Modeling calm and composure is an important piece in coaching, because that's how we want our athletes to be when they're performing. We want them to be calm and focused on the task at hand. We want them to be composed. So remember, your body language, your word, your attitude, all of those things can play a significant role and have significant impact and influence on your athletes and their learning in your environment. Consistency in your coaching and your coaching philosophy can create trust with your athletes. If you turn up as a different version of yourself every time you're coaching, your athletes won't know what to expect from you. It can actually bring and build fear as they feel uncertain as to what version of you they're going to get. Are they going to get the composed, inspiring coach today, or are they going to get the frustrated, short-tempered, poor body language coach today? And I'm sure none of you are doing that, but it's just something to think about. Are we being consistent with our coaching philosophy and showing up every day? Your growth as a coach, how do you continue in your own time and in your own way? It's great that Rowing WA provides these sessions for you to develop your coaching, but how can you also take ownership of your coaching career and your coaching work by the feedback you receive, what you do with that feedback, how you reflect on it, your openness to learning and developing your own skills. So there's a few things that I want you to think about, and you're probably already doing a lot of these, but if you're not, pick 1 or 2 of those that maybe you want to pause the video again now and write some notes about, or set yourself some goals, or just write down some reminders. All right, let's have a look at coach wellbeing. This I often find when I'm working with coaching groups and sporting clubs, this area of wellbeing is not well looked after in terms of talking about it and setting up an environment where we take care of our coaches' well-being and enable our coaches to take care of their well-being themselves. So let's acknowledge that life is busy and we are constantly on the go. The first thing I'm going to ask or get you to think about is, does it have to be this busy? Sometimes busy becomes a habit and we actually can overwork and overcook some things. So if you find yourself constantly busy and under pressure, I want you to stop, pause this video, and write down some ways that you might be able to unbusy your life, because it's not sustainable. So how might you be able to unbusy your life or create some space for a little bit of fun or a little bit of downtime? Even 30 minutes of downtime a week, it can be valuable in looking after our well-being. Coaching's hard and it can be stressful. What are you doing to manage your stress? Are you talking to people? Are you getting out in nature? And yes, I do understand that rowing is an outdoor sport predominantly. There is some training that happens indoor and on ergos and inside, but it is predominantly outside. But are you actually going for walks with family members, with friends, with you, by yourself, with a pet, and just taking in nature and managing some of that stress? Are you communicating? Are you processing some of the emotions that come up for you? You're managing multiple stakeholders, not just your athletes. As coaches, we deal with a lot of people. It could be parents, it could be club officials, it could be public, it could be organization, but we're juggling and managing multiple stakeholders. Where you can delegate that, do delegate that. Where you can't, manage it by managing good conversations and being really clear in and having clarity in your conversations so that you don't have to continually repeat yourself to these multiple stakeholders. The job is often low paid and often volunteer for many. So it's really important that you get a balanced perspective on your well-being as a coach and put it in perspective. And that is, coaching should be a joy. We should come to it knowing that our goal is to help people perform their best in their sport. So it can be a real privilege, but I also understand that it can be quite demanding on our time. And we do forego a lot of our social activities and things that we really enjoy to be coaches. So make sure, again, that you are taking care of your well-being. There's an inherent pressure to succeed. And as I said before, it's really important for you to define success for yourself and for your athletes as personal bests, as effort, as improved attitude, as coachability, as how you spend your energy, how we go about our business. Those should be our true measures of success. Are we better today than we were yesterday? And when we get really good at those things, yes, the podium and the winning comes with that, but we don't have direct control over winning, but we do have direct control over things like our attitude, our effort, our energy, the words that we choose, our behaviors, our actions, and our choices. We're often responsible for the success of others, and you may feel responsible for people's well-being. It's important to put some boundaries up around how much responsibility you're going to take for others. The more that we take on responsibility for others, the less we're encouraging them to be responsible for themselves. So let's make sure we got some really good and healthy boundaries, and we're enabling people to take responsibility for not only their own performance, but their own well-being. We can experience burnout, and often it happens before we realize. So let's make sure that when we are feeling a bit stressed, when we are feeling a bit fatigued, when we are feeling a little bit burnt out, that we are taking some time out to refresh, that we're taking some time out to do some fun stuff with loved ones or for ourselves, or pursuing other hobbies and habits. Let's not fall behind in our hobbies and good habits or in our work because we're coaching. Let's get that balance right. It can be extremely difficult to bring out your best coaching in athletes when you're feeling stressed or tired. So remember that. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important, because when we feel well, we coach well. We often overlook our personal well-being in our busy lives. We often talk about the other priorities that come before our well-being, and often our well-being sits at the bottom of our to-do list. That is not sustainable. So make sure that you're bringing your well-being and your health and your mental health back up the ladder on the to-do list and focusing on it as very important. I want to ask you a question that I want you to consider. I want you to ask yourself, how important is your health and well-being? Hopefully you're sitting there saying to yourself, it's the most important thing. And if you are your behaviors and actions in alignment with that knowledge? And if you haven't put it number one, I want you to think about why you haven't put it number one. So I want to give you some tips on how you can take care of your well-being, and it can be as simple as creating a well-being plan. Grab your calendar for the month, pop some things in there where you take some time out, where you go visit friends, where you do something for yourself, where you exercise away from the sport of rowing, where you socialize with someone, where you go and read a book in under a tree outdoors, something like that. Watch a movie. When was the last time you went and watched a movie? When was the last time you went and enjoyed a meal with a friend and talked about life and fun things, as opposed to the burdens and the heaviness of coaching and work and life? Set some boundaries around when you're going to respond to messages. We're often finding that we'll sit there at 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night responding to messages or doing work. Set boundaries. No one's going to set them for you. It is something that we need to do for ourselves. Aim to have clear two-way communication with people. Make sure that communication is a combination of speaking, listening, and body language. Make sure you're exercising outside of your coaching. Find something that you enjoy doing and do it regularly. Make sure you're taking care of your sleep. We know that it's the number one recovery tool for athletes. It's also the number one recovery tool for coaches and for human beings. Take care of your nutrition and make sure you're doing the best that you can with your diet and your nutrition in your busy lives. I always say to people, it doesn't have to be complicated. It can be as simple as taking a piece of fruit with you every day, making sure that you've got a piece of fruit, making sure that you're putting something green extra on your plate. And again, I encourage you, if you think you've got the sleep or the nutrition piece or even the exercise piece wrong, get some support. There's lots of great nutritionists. There's lots of great information on sleep. There's lots of great habits and practices that you can bring into your life to help you get those pieces right. For those of you that practice mindfulness, make sure you're doing that regularly. For those of you that haven't got a practice of mindfulness, maybe it's something you want to try, because it's a really nice way to get some calm, some clarity, and some stillness into your day, which allows you to tackle all of those big moments. If we don't get the balance between the big moments and the busy moments and some still and calm in the day, we will get stressed. Stress is cumulative. So a simple Google search on mindfulness. There are mindfulness apps, there are mindfulness podcasts, will teach you how to be more mindful. I'll give you 2 tips that I do every day that I shared with everybody on the night that we were together. One thing that I do every morning as I'm brushing my teeth, because it's 2 minutes that I'm standing there doing nothing else, is I start to think about, I've got a couple of little affirmations that I say to myself, and they are, what wonderful things. Today is going to be a beautiful day. Something wonderful is going to happen today. What wonderful things can I intentionally bring to the world? So I think about setting intentions for having a great day. And I do that while I'm brushing my teeth. So it's a really simple thing to start getting a really positive mindset as you move it from waking up, showering, brushing your teeth into your day. And I close out my day by writing my 3 gratitudes down. I do it every night. I've got a book by my bed and I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I keep them really simple. And so I might write something like, I'm grateful for the sunshine and the warmth on my skin today. a funny one that I often do, and it's usually every Monday night or Tuesday morning. I'm grateful for the rubbish truck that comes and takes our garbage away. We're really fortunate to be living in a country that does that for us. So I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for the people that do it. I'm grateful for the moments when I walk past a stranger in the street and they smile at me, and it makes me feel good. So think about smiling at someone this week. Think about your routines and how you can build routines that support your well-being. How do you build good sleep, good nutrition, good exercise patterns into your life by having good routines? Practice saying no to the unnecessary. As coaches, we often think of ourselves as helpers and people responsible for others, so we're more inclined to say yes. We can say no gracefully, and that might sound something like this. I'd really love to help you with that, but I'm very busy at the moment, and so I'm unable to. But thank you for asking me. Or I'd love to help you with that, but I can't this week. Maybe we could do that next week. So it's possible to say no. Delegate where you can. I've talked a little bit about that. We don't have to be responsible for everything as coaches. Manage your stress and socialize. And we can do a few of these things together. We can socialize, go for walks, exercise, and have a meal together. So we could go for a walk, chat with a friend, and then go and have a meal. We could do a lot of these things together. We could read a book before going to sleep. We can practice mindfulness before going to sleep. We can practice mindfulness while we're socializing. We can grab a friend and say, hey, let's go sit by the river or by the ocean, or let's go sit in a park and just enjoy being outdoors. So there's lots of ways we can habit stack or connect habits. It's called habit stacking. All right, I promised you 5 actionable things. So what I'd like to do now is quickly run you through those, and then I'd love you to pause the video and think about one of these things or all 5, if you're brave and courageous, how you could bring them into your coaching. So number 1, how do you take your coaching philosophy and build your coaching philosophy? We've talked a little bit about that into training every day so that you are intentional and clear. That is something that you can do as of your very next coaching session, is by being clear and intentional on what you want to do and showing up every training session like that. You can think about your communication, your verbal, your non-verbal, and your listening. So make sure that your communication is really effective. Is it achieving what you want it to achieve? Are your athletes getting your message? Because that's on you. Our communication is our responsibility. Use the SDT framework to intrinsically motivate your athletes. It takes a little bit of pressure off you having to externally motivate them all the time, and it gives them that sense of competence and ownership, which can be really exciting for them. Bring some mental skills training and some mental skills tools and some mental skills language to your coaching. Go back and have a look at the slides from earlier on and pick 1 or 2 things that you might be able to bring to your coaching to help your athletes perform better, feel understood, and feel more supported. And finally, but not the least important on this list, coach self-care. Look after your well-being, because well coaches can be much more effective and supportive to their athletes. All right, I promised you some resources. So here's some podcasts. I've got 4 podcasts there for you that you might be able to play while you're driving around or while you're taking that walk, because you're now going to go and do some more exercise. Here's some books that you can sit under a tree and grab some outdoor air and read some books. Or alternatively, you can listen, if you're not a reader, you can listen to these on audiobooks on Audible in your car or on your walk or sitting in a park. And here's some frameworks that I'm going to recommend that you potentially go look up to help you with your coaching. And we talked through a couple of these on the night that we were together. But you can a quick Google search will point you in the right direction of the ORBED model, which is ownership, accountability, responsibility, blame, excuse, deny. And that's getting the athletes to shift from those bed behaviors to the above the line. So the bed behaviors are the below the line behaviors and their victim behaviors, shifting up into the victory behaviors, the ownership, accountability, and responsibility above the line behaviors. So go and have a look at that model, the circle of control model. This is where we focus on the things that are in our control and not spend a whole lot of time on the things that we have absolutely no control over, which sounds like a little bit of madness to me. So let's focus on things like our effort, our energy, our actions, our emotions, our behaviors, the words that we choose, the words that we use, the way we interact with each other, the standards that we apply. All of those things are inside our control and we have ultimate control over them. So let's spend time on those things. Let's not spend time on worrying about mistakes or errors or what people think. The self-determination theory I've delivered to you tonight. If you want to learn more about it, it's such a great tool. So go and read up a little bit more about it, or start implementing, go back to the slides and implement one or two of those tips that I've given you. And the model that I really like, if you have to have difficult or performance conversations with anybody, is the SBI model, situation, behavior, and impacts model. It helps depersonalize those conversations and make them much more objective and much more easy to have. So there's a few tips and resources there for you. Obviously, this is a one-way communication here tonight, but what I do want, why I've left this slide in here is because I would like you to know that if you want to reach out to me and you've got any questions or you would like anything clarified from this video, please do. I'll provide you with my details on the final slide, but don't hesitate if you've got questions. When we're sharing knowledge and sharing wisdom, we all become better together. And in closing, this is something that I want you to think about. Where for whatever reason we are brought up in this world thinking that success is linear and there is a very straight path for some to success. The reality is success takes many twists and turns. Success is messy, coaching is messy, performance is messy. But ultimately, if we keep working on improving and growing every day and being the best version of ourselves, we are going to get that success. It's just going to take sometimes falling over, sometimes building that resilience, learning new skills. So in reality, success is a much messier path than we are led to believe, but equally rewarding. As promised, there is my telephone number, my email, and my website. I'm also on Instagram, so if you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I provide tips and ideas and motivational quotes and things like that. But also, if you would like to request anything or some information to be posted on Instagram so you can share it with your athletes, just send me a message. I'm really responsive. We're really responsive on Instagram, so we can pop something up there within 24 hours of you making a request. So don't hesitate to do that. So hopefully you've got something out of this evening. Thank you for spending time with me during this recording tonight. I'd like to thank Rowing WA for providing this opportunity for me to share what I love with you all. And thank you to Rowing WA for providing you guys the opportunity to develop your coaching and learn a little bit more about mental skills and taking care of your own coach well-being. So stay well, work hard, take care of yourselves, and I'm very happy, as I said, for you to reach out and ask any questions. Take care.